There we go. Did you ride any RAGBRAI?
No.
Are you a biker?
No.
Huh.
No. Colin was gonna ride, but he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't, or he did.
No, it's too hot. He was stout. That's what I told him. Hopefully he's on.
It was so short. I mean, it still sucked, but
you rode it yesterday.
I rode
2 days ago.
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Wednesday.
From Ames to Des Moines. Didn't.
We're live on YouTube, I see.
It's live on YouTube, but it's telling me it can't go on Facebook. I think it's because I had to change the date. Well, I think it's not going to go live on Facebook. We're going to try to redo it.
Okay.
I don't know. I wonder if I can add one. Maybe.
Is that you watching us on YouTube?
Yeah, it's going.
Dude.
Perfect.
I love it.
Trying to figure out if I can. Anyone that's watching want to comment and see if I can see it in the comments? Anybody out there want to comment? There we go. There's a Facebook user. I can at least see that it's okay. I can't tell who the Facebook people are, but that's okay. Cool. Listening while working. Yep. Sweet. Okay, cool. Let's get started. As people jump on, we'll wait for the real good stuff for a little bit further to the end. But I guess to start out, just like when we had this idea to have this, I don't know, monthly, quarterly, short-term rental market data, like in a business perspective, why is it important to you to know this data so much?
From my end, right? I mean, it kind of helps us make a lot of our decisions. A, for our business, but B, just as any investor plan in the world, right? Ups and downs can change your bottom line of revenue and or your profit, depending on the gives and takes. And I think there's a lot of macro articles right now. I shared with our team, this is about a month ago, a macro article of like Airbnb everywhere, and the top 10 cities revenue was cut in half from 2022 this far, and this, so truly comparing 6 months to 6 months. Now I think when you start looking micro, Des Moines is not way. But I think there's a lot of different attributes to that, but like staying on the data and understanding the data helps give you all those little grains of salt to help kind of piece together everything that you're really after to give the whole pictures of what the Des Moines market's like in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I would just echo that. Like one of the things I love about it is the ability to make decisions based on data instead of based on feeling or what we think about the market. It's why I like short term data better than long term, is because long term is just it's outdated. The moment you find out what someone rents something for and they get it rented, it's gone, and you can't go refine that. You just have a couple, algorithm type softwares, your Zillow, your Rentometer for long term, and this is kind of that short term um, way to calculate returns. So
I do want to comment there though, because I do think so that could start to change some depending on the pricing software people are using. So I mean, what's everyone's big deal in the short-term rental world right now? Direct bookings, right? I mean, Airbnb as well, and I think this kind of leads us into market in a way, right? But like people are after direct bookings right now. Cutting out your Airbnb, your VRBO, your bookings.com. It's a big thing for A, returning guests, and then B, for cutting out the fees, right? I mean, that the price, your prices doesn't change, but when you can cut out 17% of Airbnb's fees, because that's how they're making money, right? And those are starting to attribute at the macro level, macro wise, in Austin and Dallas and LA, San Diego, your Florida area, like the direct bookings becoming a thing, right? So Airbnb, when they say, look, our revenue is so down, well, it's because, I mean, if you look at the demand in a way, there's still demand out there. Now, is it all through Airbnb anymore? Or are they going through VRBO, booking.com, or direct booking, right? It starts to become that way. And that's at the macro level. And I think that's just starting to take off in Des Moines a little bit too, is from a direct booking standpoint, returning guests. 3 weeks ago, right? There's that massive softball tournament in Des Moines where there was like over 1,000 teams, I believe. And they had like every softball field in Des Moines taken care of, right? Well, probably 75% of the guests in Des Moines area are part of that softball tournament, which is saying a lot, but that brings in that many people, right? But when those softball tournaments understand direct bookings and they trust your place because they've stayed there before or they're coming back next year, right? That's how you start to attribute those direct bookings. And that's starting to take a role into some of this. Now, if people are using dynamic pricing software like PriceLabs, Wheelhouse, there's a few others, or like a PMS software of HostAway, Guesty, right? They're still triggering in, but if they have completely gone off some of those things, some of that won't show up anymore, like it does through Airbnb, VRBO, PriceLabs, or a Guesty Wheelhouse area. That kind of explain that, how that could change a little bit, but
yeah, so
it's
if
still
on the direct booking sites, you're telling me that when that happens, that data is not tracked anywhere, right?
unless it is tracked through like a PriceLabs, or if you're using a property management software that's pushing it through it, that's ending up on we'll call it a PriceLabs, HostAway, a Guesty, that's still pushing data into some of these larger areas. It starts to work, but like from AirDNA standpoint, right? They're pulling from actual Airbnb and VRBO, right? All of a sudden, they become not obsolete, but they're not receiving that data, and PriceLabs is. So, I mean, when I start to really look at data, like you have to garbage in is garbage out, but also verification on one, does it work the same on the other, right? PriceLabs started to change quite a bit the way and it's becoming more selective when you start looking at the dynamic side of the market analysis, and you can really start to compare with AirDNA and PriceLabs, and then actually looking on Airbnb and VRBO as well, and start to take 4 or 5 sources and piece together to create your analysis as well.
Cool. That's good. I didn't even think about that. And like just perspective wise, in Des Moines, you know how much direct booking happens? Like, is there any way to see that? I guess if it's not Des Moines, like how about national? Is it what, 15%?
Depends how engaged people are with their direct booking sites and how long they've been in business from a return booking standpoint. Stuff that I've read or that our team has read is like, hey, if you have 30 to 50% direct bookings of your total bookings, that's a win. There's a lot of companies that push for 60 to 70%, right? But there's still those large traffic areas like Airbnb and VRBO, and Booking.com starting to make a run even in Des Moines area. They're just starting to get in the game and really playing that side of it too. So there's always going to be those animals out there, and I think you have to be diversified, and that's the word that comes into play. But getting direct bookings and growing that side of your business is more advantageous if you can get the returning guests or the SEO Google side of it, right? Because then you get to cut 17% of that profit, or 17%. It's cheaper for the guests. You get to hold your price a little bit better. It starts to make sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that. We didn't really do intros at the beginning. Probably should do that, of like who we are and why someone should listen, or, take our words with a grain of salt. My name is Darson Grantham. I've been investing in real estate in Des Moines for since 2018, mainly long-term until last year, and also a licensed real estate agent here. I do a handful of meetups every month around the Des Moines metro area, cater to a lot of folks that are investing in Des Moines. About 50% of my business is a realtor. But one of the things I really enjoy doing is providing or finding a way to educate my clients, my future clients, just people in general about real estate investing. Because in my opinion, someone that is educated about real estate investing, it's just a better customer for me. It's a better investor for the community. And so that's why we put these on it was about a year ago or so, probably about a year ago right now, honestly. I reached out to a couple past clients, and Cole was one of them, and said, hey, let's consider a short-term rental hospitality company. And what's that look like? Is that feasible? And so, yeah, we kicked that off. And Cole, I'll let you kind of take over from here on where that business has gone and what we're doing. And then we'll get into the true data about Des Moines, because if there's anyone that knows the data in Des Moines, I would I would put him up against Cole and how he's doing it. So go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, so I started investing, I don't know, we bought a fourplex, me and my brother partnered up in the fourplex. I think it was right in 2020, or right really when the world, COVID started really to happen, right? And then been doing that since, managing 11 doors now between me and my brother on the long-term rental side. And then when we kind of a year ago started this trek down this hospitality company, we kind of tout ourselves, hey, we were a property management company. We have since started to change our fold, because short-term rental is a little bit different. You're not an actual property management company. You need to strive to be a hospitality company, right? You're after guest reviews. You're after making the stay and the experience at the highest level. More of hospitality orientation, not a property management company. I think blending those two is something, but really you're hospitality at the end of the day. And so we've really started to change our tune on how we've done that, and how that conversation with the guest is versus what a property management company, and how they would talk versus a hospitality company. We really started kicking off probably about a year ago. We really got our first listing live in October. And I think the cool part is we were part of the major growth of Airbnb, and really a lot of people jumping on the short-term rental train, and we'll talk through the data and the growth from when we kind of started to where we are now, and how the competition is raved and really picked up. However, the actual revenue started to decrease some, but now we're kind of operating 4 listings at this point. We're bringing on 5 and 6 here in the next month, and then working on 7, 8, and 9, hopefully here at the end of September, and starting all this stuff jiving and whatnot. So what do you else you want to talk about before we jump into the data, Darson?
That's perfect. So let's recap last quarter. That was what, February, now March, probably April. Actually, I think we ended up doing it. One of the things I took away from that was there was an incredible influx of new inventory, new places to rent in the market, like 500 or 600 more since September. And so that was playing a huge key factor into the income diversification or revenue that people were making. I think you talked about it there. Everyone was down, or generally the market was down on average 30%, and that wasn't due to less bookings. It was due to more inventory, more places to rent. So people had other places to stay. So that's one of the things I took away. What do you think about last quarter? Where were we at? And just to recap on that.
Yeah, just pulling through my notes of stuff I wrote down when we did that back in March at this point. Really, there's still a lot of demand, but the supply had increased, right? Just short piece of this, right? And has that supply outpaced the demand? That was the question. It was really going to tell, hey, what is July going to tell us? In a lot of ways, and AirDNA lagged a little bit on dropping the data. We were going to try to do this 2 weeks ago, and I texted Darson, like, I didn't drop it yet. That's really going to tell this story of where we landed, and that's probably how do we do that. And I know when we had our internal conversations as a team, it's like, hey, we got to be good at this, because like there's a lot of supply out there, and in May, June, July, everyone's good, right? Those are the hottest 3 months, 4 months. But if you're number 8 or 9 and 10 on the list of properties and not in the top 3, that really makes it a hard December and January and February. So that's kind of where we were after from our team standpoint. But then, like, how do you start to find out where your properties are at? Then what to start to think about, all those things. Those are the things I took away. I was like, hey, this is what we have to do.
Right. And so the reason just like for a business perspective, the reason that it's so hard in your fall, winter months, if you are the 8, 7, 8, 9, is because that's telling you where the algorithms are placing you compared to everybody else. Right. So then you know that, yeah, your May, June, July are doing really well, and they're kicking ass compared to February, but that's going to change because there's going to be fewer bookings, and that's what winter comes, and you aren't getting the overflow that they couldn't book the top 3, so then they go down to the 7, 8, 9. Is that right?
Yep. The opportunity to be booked. You just have 7 properties in front of you if you're 8 in line that are likely going to book before you, and there's the opportunity to get that start to roll. But all right, let's look at the data here. So I think the thing that it doesn't really surprise me that it changed, or that it really was that amount, but we had been seeing about a 10% quarter over quarter growth. You can really start to see that on my mouse here as we really started to tick up here, and here. This quarter, we really only saw a 5% growth or increase from Q1 to Q2.
Hold on, bear with me. Where are you at? I don't see your mouse.
Right here. Down at the bottom left.
You're down bottom left, rental growth. Okay, gotcha.
Yep. You can start to see, hey, in Q1 of 2020, Q1 of 2022, we're at 419, and this is just specifically the Des Moines zip codes, all the way to we were at 719, but we really only went up about 20 properties in the Des Moines zip codes. When I start looking elsewhere in West Des Moines, the second biggest market in the Des Moines area, and then it becomes Ankeny, right? They saw similar 5% growths comparatively, and then when you start looking at like Clive, Urbandale, they actually, some of those smaller zip codes in that orientation, less Airbnbs as well. I think in Clive there's only like 13 Airbnbs as whole, right? A lot of that stayed level. They're just a little bit farther from downtown or those kind of popular areas. But we saw that 5% increase in supply in a lot of ways. So kind of different, kind of change of tune of what we have been seeing. I guess backwards, I might have seen that we would have continued to be at 8, 7, 8, 9% growth, not a 5% growth. That would have been my thought process, especially with us walking into big months for us. But I mean, the data says it was only about 5.2% growth in total supply for people to book.
Well, that kind of makes sense because if you, like, I just think as an owner, if you're owning the property and you had a terrible January, February, March, which we said most did, right? Comparatively, compared to what they had last year, they had a really bad January, February, March. And you're like, well, why wouldn't I just sell it in the spring market or go get a long-term tenant? Right. So like that does make sense. It's not, yeah. Cool.
So when I start breaking that down, and I don't have this up, if I start to piece stuff together, studios and 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 and 4 bedrooms, and then 5+ bedrooms, the biggest growth was 2 bedrooms of that. That was actually of that 5% or those, about 60, 70 properties. 50 of those were 2 bedrooms. So it makes the 2 bedroom market like, hey, it's going to get more competitive. And when you piece together 1 bedrooms versus 2 bedrooms, there are 4 more 2 bedrooms than there are 1 bedrooms. Now, if you put studios and 1 bedrooms together, there are about 25 more, but studios and 1 bedrooms compared to 2 bedrooms. But really, I mean, really shows the competitive side of it is the 2 bedrooms, and that's where a lot of the supply is right now. And we were talking with somebody last week, 2 weeks ago, right? Now, and we were talking through revenue opportunity at 2 bedrooms. That has been your largest decrease in percentage of revenue. In 2022, you're really shooting for a 30 plus 30 grand as a total revenue in a 2 bedroom. And now if you break 28 grand, you had a good year. That's just because that's where your supply and the competitive nature is at. And people are adjusting list price downward to obtain bookings.
So 2 bedroom, you're in it like you're 4 to 6 people, right?
4 to 7 probably.
7.
You have depending on how many couches you have and what couch pulls out into a bed, and then you have your 2 bedroom guests, or do you bunk bed those up, right? That's, I mean, when I look at a 2 bedroom, I really optimize. You want 6 guests in it. Put yourself in a good spot from dividing out. If, let's say 6 buddies get together or 3 couples or whatnot, that's how you start to piece out that average daily rate that night.
Cool. Makes sense. And the 2 bedroom, that was popular. Like that's been the most. That's been the most number of listings forever, right? Like that's not. We kind of talked about that last time. Is the opportunity is maybe in the 3 or even 4+ bedroom to beat out or just be different than the competition.
For sure.
Okay. Sweet. What else we got?
I think it's good to hear so this is the booking demand, right? You can obviously see the uptick in properties, and you can kind of see my mouse bumping on the bottom here. Really, when you look a year ago, so I want to say this, like demand, so different from supply. So this is people booking properties. That is increasing still. When you look from June of 2022 to June of 2023, right? I mean, the exact numbers of 7,302 nights booked to now there's 8,000 or 700 more nights that were booked in June from 22 to 23. So I say demand is still increasing, right? There is still a need for listings within the Des Moines market, right? It's just that our supply has gone from that of the bookable nights have really gone from 380 to 505. Now that doesn't correlate to active listings, but that's just the properties that were booked there. So I mean, there's 200 or 120 plus properties that were being able to be booked that were booked in June comparatively, and that's where you start to see nights outpacing the demand. And now you can start to see, as we roll into 2023, demand is outpacing book nights. Now, obviously, you would expect this line and the difference of that line to start to shear up during our popular months. I think in 2 months from now, you're going to see July was super good for people, and August was just as good. But that's where the big separation is in the winter months, and that's where 1, 2, 3, and 4 become a big deal. Because if there's only 4,167 nights and there's 32 properties booked, right? You want to be in, or the 372 properties, you want to be in the 372 and not the 0. So,
I mean, it's a good perspective. I don't have any questions on that.
Then I always like to look at this, right? Go ahead. Do you have something?
I mean, I just keep going back, is like, it just matters so much to be better photos, better reviews, better amenities, or things within your property. Like, how do you, it turns so far away from real estate into a thumbnail photo click-through rate game. Like, that's just, and maybe that's just because that's how my brain has been working as I grow my business. But what do you think when I say that? What do you think?
No, it does. And we actually working through a subscription right now, and I'm going to pull it up for us so we can start to see some of this. It really looks a lot at the Airbnb stuff, and let's pause on that because it'll start to make a lot of sense, and I'll show different properties, and you can start to see one pacings of the other, but like really our name and domain is driving a few things, but then our click-through rate, and you can start to pick some stuff out. There's a question that kind of popped in. Do midterm 30-day minimum homes differ a lot from STR data? So the funny part is, and it's really not funny, an active part is a lot of people list in both places. So I'm going to use one of our buddies' example. He has midterms and he uses midterms, and he has quite a few bookings for midterms. But then he does also have those on Airbnb. So as soon as he's blocking dates in and out, that is actively transitioning to Airbnb that, hey, these are booked nights. So it's actively kind of transitioning that stuff. Is it always accurate? That's where that garbage in, garbage out kind of comes into play. You have to kind of sift through that stuff. When you really actually click through on a property, and I'm just going to grab this one real quick. You can maybe start to see that as you look ahead. Do they have 3 nights? Do they have 2 nights? Or do they have like 60 days that are booked? I doubt this one has it. But that's how you can start to differentiate if it's a midterm or not. But sometimes it shows up in there and sometimes it doesn't. That to, I guess, answer that question.
It's definitely the whole case of, shit data in, shit data out. It's because what do they book it at? What do they tell Airbnb that they booked it at? Or like that dollar amount is a little fuzzy, I would imagine.
And that's where property management software start to come into play. If you're booking in multiple places and using like the Furnish Finder as well, you're tracking those things. And that's where a lot of times, I don't dislike AirDNA, so don't think it that way. But a lot of times I will put more of my faith into like a Price Labs, of people using the Price Labs or a Guest You through the property management softwares that are kind of triggering these places. But that's where you also, I go back to my comment earlier, you have to use multiple sources to start to find. Don't rely on one.
Cool. Okay.
Lastly, I love looking at this is what are the best properties? These are all properties. What are the best ones that are standing out? in a lot of ways. And then you can start to drill down to what are the best 2 bedrooms right now, and where are those kind of at, in a lot of ways. And everyone starts to think, well, I bet they're downtown. You can start to see on this map, they're not. Number 1, 3, and 5 are downtown or close to, but the rest are kind of everywhere. So that's one thing I look at too, that I just, how can I get our properties in that way? What do those properties look like? What are they doing different than us? Are we in that set of properties or not? That's what starts to make sense to me. All right, you brought up this, so I'm going to bring up, this is a new software that's kind of out there. It's called IntelliHost. It really takes
Hold on,
through.
Let me make sure I can get you up there. I don't. Do you have it pulled up?
I do.
It's not coming through on
it.
No.
See it?
There you go.
I can see it.
Is it got a blue?
Yes. So
yep.
IntelliHost.
I do have to say, like, quite the name. You know, it reminds me of Teletubbies back in the day. Anyway, carry on.
That's funny. So really what it's doing is it's taking impressions showing up on the first page, in a lot of ways, or within the search result. It's first page impressions. Are you showing up on the first page? Then it goes, are you being clicked? And then what is your transition rates of being booked? So this is our 1-bedroom property. So you can see that we are showing up in the last 20 days. So we are just, as you can see, I have a free subscription for 30 days. If anyone wants to sign up, connect your properties and do it. You don't get good data for 10 days. So you only have like 15 days to work with and play with it. It does cost money after that. Probably gonna jump into this because it does make sense and it does work. Now there's some things I disagree with too, but when you look at impressions to comparative to your first page, are you showing up in the results of the first page in that, and are you on the first page? You can see we're 66% of the time on the first page of a result of our 1-bedroom, which comparative to competition, I mean, we're 1,000 more first page impressions. And then you go downward to clicks, right? Well, that's, what are your pictures start to look like? What are your reviews? What is your dollar amount? What is your pricings? All these stuff start to play. And then it goes to book nights. So you can see we have a better percentage of book nights but when you start looking at our data downward compared to the competition's data downward, the competition does a little bit better from a data standpoint. But when you start to look at our opportunity versus someone else's opportunity to be booked, you can start to see we're kind of crushing them in a little bit of a way, right? Because we're 66% of the time showing up on the first page impression. So our opportunity is instantly more because we're on the first page. And I read this in AirDNA data is that 86% of bookings, customers do not leave the first page of Airbnb.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows how you get on that first page.
It doesn't show how you do. It just shows you where
you're
at.
Your statistics of how to do
how
that.
Often.
Or so it shows you. Yes.
Yeah. Does the C recommendations, does that tell you what you need to do to get more? Is that like what they're selling?
No. It doesn't really.
Okay. We don't need to get into it.
It just kind of gives you things that you should think through. Are your photos up to date? Have you done this and that, right? But you can start to see what it really looks like in a lot of ways of how this property downward is winning or losing. So let's look at this property. So we recently just changed our pictures on our first 4 pictures on the first page, right? And it's because of this data. So you could see we were showing up in impressions. We were getting first page, we were showing up in the search results. We were winning a little bit on clicks, but why weren't we getting book nights? Our competition was getting more book nights from us. So starting to change one thing. Hey, let's change our first 5 pictures. That when you click on the listing, it shows like your 7 pictures. Like, let's make those our best 7 pictures and not just have our pictures in order from up and down. So that's what we did, and now we're letting that ride for 3 days, and you can start to see our data from when we started is starting to increase. So you can see when my photo order happened on the 13th. So I only have data to the 19th. It's still playing catch up. You can see that we're starting to get some more traction in there, and then it's starting to translate from clicks, and then it's starting to translate in our impressions as well. So just a nugget.
Can you run this for other people's properties?
No. So you cannot run this for other people's properties. So on the back end, IntelliHost runs into your Airbnb. They are a co-host, but you sign a bunch of paperwork that says they can't change anything or do anything, but they become a co-host underneath you. So then they're looking at all of your data in a lot of ways underneath it. If you look on Airbnb and go to the insights tabs, it's taking a lot of that insights and then actually pre-populating into a little bit better visual. But what Airbnb does is they look at past insights, and what IntelliHost is doing is translating that into frontward looking of how your property is doing, and Airbnb is only looking at that time of what that property is doing.
So IntelliHost, it's really Airbnb driven. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
It is really Airbnb driven.
Yeah.
No, because it's tied into our Airbnb account.
Gotcha.
But it's taking all that data, and you can start to see where we're winning and losing to similars and not. I mean, like, I only have 20 days of data. And I really, as you can tell, only have like 10 days of worthy data to go off of. But I mean, that's not that this property is doing bad, because it had a really, really good. It's just when you look at the competition, it's in the Ingersoll area, right? Very competitive 3-bedroom area, right? We're only about a negative $115 comparative to some of the top properties, but we're still losing that battle. So what is that is, and how do you change that? And right now we can start to track when we've changed our cover photos, or when we tweaked the pricing, or some of these items, and it tells you what's winning and not, and how to look at that.
Yep.
Just something new that's out there in a lot of ways.
Well, it's new, and it's just smart business. I mean, like, we didn't start. We kind of started this company on a whim, and then we dug in and we're like, we can be really good. We just got to know it really well. And yeah, knowing this stuff, it kind of proves the point of, like, there's the haves and have-nots, or like the people that are just trying to pay their mortgage with their Airbnb, and then there's the people that are like trying to make money doing Airbnb or short-term rentals, excuse me. Okay, go ahead.
For sure. All right, the next thing, and if people have questions, they can just chime in. Don't be afraid to ask. If our email is at the bottom, a lot of times if there's data oriented stuff, you can kind of work with me. We can set up calls and talk through properties as well. Kind of get that free advice from our end, but also I think it's fair to look at studios and ones, 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms and 4s, and how they've kind of transitioned and translate. And then obviously you're after revenue and total revenue, and you can start to see that. So specifically 1 bedrooms, when you start looking at, so we don't look at July yet. July is there, but we're not all the way through, so it's not total data, but we can look through June and compare June and May and April, and because our last time we did this was March. or just the first part of April. So I like going backwards. I think comparing that time to time, you can kind of see what the dollars were. And I think if you look at May, right, when you trade May for in 22 to May in 23, there's like a negative $600 difference on average. And where you really, I mean, that's just revenue, but also you need to take into account occupancy, and that's where that RevPAR number comes into play. Hotels like to use this number because it takes into account their total revenue, but then also on the background takes in their occupancy as well. And so you can start to see that number and actually compare stuff to different hotels that have more than you or you can start to compare hotels that have more rooms than you, bookable rooms, to your revenue and occupancy. You can compare locations and whatnot. It kind of puts everyone on that level playing field. And so that RevPAR number comes into play of, hey, it was 55 in 2022, but then when we get to 2023, it was 38. So you know that, hey, revenue was likely down and occupancy was down. But then you look at June and comparatively, it's $50, and then it was 55. And then it was 69. So you understood that last June was better, but that's where when you start piecing this stuff together, that's where the supply starts to come into play. And then we know from what we are dealing with that there's a lot of people that are wanting bookings, that are trying to play the game, that are changing the way that they are pricing things. I see that you have some questions, or there's a pile of questions that are coming in.
Keep going. We'll get these in just a second.
So that's one bedrooms comparatively. Two bedrooms are the same way. Things are starting to play. There was a more of a level revenue to level revenue. And then when you look at the RevPAR number comparatively as well, it was the same. Now it's trending. We can't complete it yet, but it's trending that way, that July will be bigger than 2023. There were so many events in July, and July is the on most times in Des Moines, if you go backwards more years, the number one month in a lot of ways. But the events in Des Moines and the actual people visiting Des Moines at that time, whether it's for vacation or for events, that's where that demand for booking really starts to come in.
That's crazy. That's a crazy stat that it's bigger than 2022, because that hasn't. That's gotta be the first month that's been bigger than 22, right?
In the competitive markets, so like your ones and twos, when you start looking at your three bedrooms, your June was pretty close in a lot of ways, but really, and your May was more in a lot of ways as well, but that's a less competitive market because you're dealing with only 203 and 4 bedrooms versus the 305 2 bedrooms, almost 100 more in a way. And then when you get into the 5+, so I call them the mansions, your big house, the opportunity for large, right? There's only 36 of those properties that are 5, 6, and 7. We can see that up here. 36 active listings within a 10-mile radius of the center of Des Moines.
Yeah, that's such small data. I mean, things can skew so greatly.
For sure. And when you start looking through, right? I gear really I'm after 70% occupancy in a lot of ways. You don't want to be 100% occupancy because you don't understand what your opportunity loss was. I'll speak to that a lot of, if you're 100%, could you have gotten more and that you don't know about, right? And that's where you're really after that optimizing your revenue and occupancy. And a lot of times that starts to work at 70 to 75%. Do I always win? No. Do I like to have good occupancy? Yes. But it's starting to become a thing too of people are choosing different strategies, and Darson wanted to hear this live because I was talking to him about it. Is like I'm starting to see there's two strategies, pricing strategies. There is I'm going to lower my price and I'm going to get to 80-90% occupancy, or people are raising price and they are going to be good with 45% occupancy. So there's 2 days here, and you're seeing that at some of the larger houses. So your 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 bedroom houses, that's what they're going after in a lot of ways. And then your 2s and 1 bedrooms, they are actually going after more of the occupancy side of it. I mean, does that surprise you, or does that?
I mean, it doesn't sound like two different strategies. It sounds like two different assets that you're trying to maximize, right? Because you can't compare. It isn't. I don't know. In my opinion, you can't compare a 5 bedroom house to a 1 bedroom apartment in like the uh,
Keep going,
pricing
keep going. I'm just
strategy.
gonna pull stuff up.
Um, I just it's two different consumers. But then you go into number of units, like you said, like 36 of the mansion houses. And so, like, how often are all 36 booked, right? And yeah, so like that kind of leads into, and we'll just do this, talk just real briefly on this question. Jesse asked, how do apartments, multifamily, and houses, larger houses compare in performance relation to giving buying power? So basically, like, and I read that question as like, what performs better, right? With the dollars that you spend, what performs better? There, I mean, I'll let you answer that, Cole. But first, I will answer in the fact that it will depend on the apartment that you buy, the multifamily that you buy, the small house or the large house that you buy. And so there isn't an answer. You have to analyze it against what your other options are. So, say you're buying a $300,000 um, single family home, and you probably had a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and so that's what 80,000, to $100,000 of a down payment that you have to make when you do that, right? So that's what's your opportunity there. If it's a very good performing $300,000 house, like that might perform very good if you have that 80 to 100K. But I know like my my little 1 bedroom apartment that's in a small multifamily, like it performs pretty good, and I don't have very much cash into it because it was transitioned from a long-term rental that I just did not want to put another tenant in that um, class in there. I felt good enough just rolling the dice on short term, and it's performed really well. So my cash on cash I mean, it's pretty good comparatively. Um, so I think it totally depends on the property and how much cash you have and yeah. How do you answer that, Cole?
So today, a lot of stuff doesn't work on the MLS for long-term rental. So a lot of people are looking at short-term rental. But when we analyze a lot of properties for people as well, it's not as great as what you think it is when you look at short-term rentals as well. Because a lot of people forget, like on a 4 bedroom house, you are going to have, depending on how you furnish it, $25,000 to $40,000 furnishing budget, right? And when you start looking at cash on cash, long-term rent, you don't have that. You may have a $5,000 or $6,000 budget for a little bit of rehab or this or that. It depends what you're buying. Because we had this discussion the other day, Darson, that it was like you can do it different ways, and deals are still out there. Don't get me wrong, but looking at cash on cash is a little different. And people think instantly short-term rental, there's a ton of revenue opportunity in there too, right? There is. It's not disagreeing with that. It's just you have also a different amount of money you have to put forward because furnishing is a big deal. And we really tout interior designing because standing out and pop and pictures and all that stuff is a bigger deal because you're trying to get eyeballs. The new economy is eyeballs in a lot of way in this piece of short-term rentals, and getting eyeballs is how that does. So whether it's an apartment or a multifamily unit or a single family house, from a performance piece, all three can do very well. It's just how do you represent that from an eyeball standpoint and accuracy standpoint, right? Don't try to be inaccurate because you will get destroyed in your reviews, and reviews are what drives your next set of impressions.
Okay, so he followed up and
answers.
Yeah, he followed up and he said in the short-term space. So I guess comparing an apartment versus a small house, like, are those comparables? Like a 2-bedroom apartment versus a 2-bedroom house?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have a 2-bedroom duplex, and it's comparatively revenue to revenue to a 2-bedroom small house. But it goes by accuracy and explaining the correct information and amenities and all that stuff. But our 2-bedroom does just as well as a 2-bedroom house up the way, right? It's just how do you explain that, and how accurate are you, and then what is your inside and photo start to look like? How are you comparing?
Yeah, so that reminds me. If anyone is interested in basically a PDF guide, I think Cole, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would give this away, or at least share it. So email that Des Moines STR at Gmail, and we'll send you what our PDF guide is that we give out to the folks that are looking to onboard or considering working with us. Just because we think photos are like I talked earlier, this is not a real estate game anymore. This is a marketing click-through rate photos game. And in order to do that, you need to know what your photos should look like down to what type of photos should be taken. Your photographer should use this PDF because a standard real estate photographer, the photos are going to look good, but those photos don't get clicked on like short-term rental photos get clicked on. So take that for what it's worth. Email us and we'll send you over.
And we learned that is something that our group learned.
Yep. And we listened to a lot of content, and no one's ever drilled it down that far, I guess. I don't say nobody, but at least we haven't heard that content. So Cole put it together, and we're happy to share it.
Great.
Here's a tactical question. What are you guys using to track expenses for short-term rentals? Cole, you are the guy for this.
QuickBooks. I am QuickBook class oriented. There's a lot of things that are tracked through this. We have 8 different subscription softwares that we use. We have quite a few inventory software or inventory pieces that we use. And this is just from the property management side of it, right? But as well as for our clients, we're tracking handyman dollars and cents, contractor dollars and cents. We distinguish those by hours, and then legal or licensed contractors versus a handyman, and whatnot. And then we are pulling in from Airbnb and then VRBO and direct bookings, like different invoices pull in. So we know what we paid in Airbnb service fees. We know what our cleaning our cleaning income is and our outward cleaning is, so we can kind of see our profit margin there or negative profit margin, because that is a thing too. Most of the time it's costing more to clean a place than what you're charging on Airbnb, but should you absorb that cost in your average daily rate as a whole? Yes. But that's playing the mind psychology game, I'll call it, with the total dollars that a guest is paying. But we use QuickBooks for everything from a tracking standpoint.
Sweet. Cool. Anything? We got a few minutes left. Any other questions? Or Cole, do you have anything else you want to touch on?
No. Those that use AirDNA, I do want to explain this because this is interesting. So when I pull this up, and I can zoom in a little bit. So when I pull this up, on AirDNA, you can kind of see the days available, average daily rate, occupancy, and revenue. The piece of this is that days available, that is not days that it has been available on Airbnb or VRBO or whatnot. That is days that AirDNA has tracked that property. So when you start doing comparatives and searching, you should be looking for properties that have over 250 from a comparison standpoint. They have days of data, more than a half a year that AirDNA has tracked them. That's where that one with 50, that's not bad data, but understand that that data has just taken it through the best 2 months in the summer, where now you're looking at 273 days of track data in a way. That's not what it's been live. Just something to think about too. And then one of the features that I really like on AirDNA is clicking through your 4s, your 3s, and it just starts to pop that stuff up. That's really how I quick math look through it. And then from a price lab standpoint, when you start to look at these maps as well, it does the same thing, and it leads you right to where these properties are, and you can truly compare left and right of what you should be doing or how to stand out better than that property next to you. Yeah,
that's good. Good information. Appreciate you sharing that. The total data, yeah, like it's you have to compare apples to apples. You cannot compare it to someone who just threw something on the last 2 months and killed it. I mean, you're still competing against them, but it's not expected. Not for sure expected. Yes, we do offer, we do short-term hospitality. Yeah, email us. Happy to jump on a call to just figure out if that might be a good fit. I will say we do ask a lot on the front end so that we can just take it over and run with it on the back end. So we'll sit down and run an analysis and see what we would expect your numbers to be. The last couple have come through. Owners prior to coming to us have been over enthusiastic about what the property was going to generate in income. So we had to just, bring them down and say, hey, that might be what you're expecting. That might be what you're hoping for, but this is the data that we're seeing. We're not giving you stuff and pie in the sky stuff. It's true data. So, yep. Happy to shoot us an email, reach out. We're happy to set something up. Cool. Okay. Cool. I got to get going. Appreciate everyone for joining. Well, thank you. And we'll for sure do this. Would you know when the next one's coming out, the next quarterly data dump, or
October-ish?
Okay. Sweet. That'll give us good data around the because is it September is the really down month for most of Iowa?
We start to decrease in September. October is there's a dip in there. November, you have Thanksgiving. There are surprisingly bookings in November, and then December really struggles until you get to kind of Christmas. And then January is hot on New Year's, but pretty dull after that.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. I appreciate it, Cole. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.